However, by means of clever organization of the space allocation plan and good proportioning, one not only meets the basic requirements, but also creates high added value. This is what we call architecture. As Thomas Edison somewhat casually remarked, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. This statement can be directly applied to all types of design, but the perspiration must no longer be evident in the finished work. A house is not a fitness machine. Thus, the effect should be exactly reciprocal to the effort. I call it 1% how, 99% wow. In outstanding designs, much like with Chinese circus artists, even the most difficult is served with a smile. A next positive restriction is the explicit altercation between architectural tradition and innovation. Every new task is faced with this conflict. With regards to structural design, there is the older and more recent architectural tradition on the one hand, which offers an enormous wealth of solutions for almost all challenges that arise. On the other hand, we are constantly presented with new technologies, such as the use of plastics and composite materials, CAD-based form finding, and also new approaches to logistics and assembly. From a design perspective, every new task alludes to reference examples. Construction types continue to develop in a kind of ongoing evolution. As there are no patents on architectural concepts, at least not yet, architecture functions as an open source network. Thus, openness is the order of the day, or in the words of Frank Zappa, a mind is like a parachute. It only works when open. The third positive restriction to which we subject our architecture is that of constantly laying out our concepts and structures in accordance with aspects of sustainability, because we live in a closed system. In this regard, our understanding of this notion is not just restricted to ecological aspects, although these are the most time-consuming to implement, but rather it incorporates all cultural requirements as well. A sustainable concept incorporates the entire life circle, from planning to dismantling, while also taking into account the different lifespans of building elements, which vary from around 10 to around 100 years. Here, system separation is the key. A sustainable concept minimizes the consumption of resources and strives to keep the environmental impact as low as possible through the entire service life. A sustainable building is flexible with regard to usage so that it can quickly be adapted to rapidly changing needs of future occupants without major effort. A sustainable building incorporates the greater context and creates a sense of identity for occupants and beholders. Because last but not least, the building must be loved by their occupants in order to be used sustainably. For the assessment of ecological aspects, some very good aids are now available. In Switzerland, for example, 3 different bodies are involved in the regulation of energy consumption. It's the state, it's the Society of Engineers and Architects, and it's a private association called Minergie. This private association, in particular, has significantly advanced the debate on sustainable design by developing the so-called Minergie standard, or Minergie label, a convenient instrument for the assessment of buildings, which has established itself as a pseudo-standard in Switzerland. The standard follows an interesting strategy. Because unlike other attempts at regulation, the label places occupant comfort at the very top of its definition. Technical aspects and the need to build an energy-efficient manner are only secondary factors, derived from this prerequisite. Nevertheless, it is of course primarily the technical aspects which are regulated, in which regard the preeminent and also the most controversial point is the compulsory mechanical ventilation. The disadvantages of additional space requirements for the ventilation ducts, for instance, and of the higher investment costs, which make about 10 to 15%, are more than compensated for by the advantages of high air quality, good noise insulation, and low energy consumption. Another point in the label's very strict specifications, which will take some getting used to on the part of architects, now also restricts the materials used in the building. Recently, the state has also been making further progress, for instance, with a new energy pass for buildings, comparable to those for electrical devices or vehicles. To be quite honest, the benefit of this instrument are not yet clear to me. However, I do see the independent initiatives taken by large municipalities and cantons as promising. In the city of Zurich, for example, the people have launched an initiative to limit the total energy consumption to the sustainable level of 1960, so-called 2000 watt society. One consequence of these new codes of conduct is the rise of the value of wood, a material which has been somewhat forgotten since industrialization and the associated rise to prominence of reinforced concrete. The increased use of wood as a construction material is not something which I include in the aforementioned list of positive restrictions. It is merely a consequence thereof. However, due to wood's growing reputation as being particularly suitable for the new requirements, I am dedicating a few words to it here. Unlike concrete and steel, wood grows back. And what's more, it also absorbs CO2, especially in combination with other materials and new technologies. This material scores a lot of points. Certain material properties have already long been known, others have only been researched in recent decades after changes in legislation, or are still waiting for their commercial potential to be discovered. It is certain that wood, unlike almost any other material, has an enormously diverse range of possible applications, particularly when it comes to building an attractive and sustainable house. The use of this material is being promoted by current developments in energy policy. If a building's energy balance is taken into account, wood is not just the ecological, but often also the economically sustainable solution. Thus, at the moment, everything suggests that the future of our cities, even in the centers, will be increasingly characterized by wood heat protection in summer. The composite timber slabs are the centerpiece of the building structural system and are decisive with regard to how much wood can actually be used. Therefore, with the civil engineer, we talked about different structures which could be used in the building. widespread, it involves a lot of development work and requires know-how to be transferred from the fields of steel construction or concrete element construction to timber construction engineering. This is the actual state of this slope. It's the wood that is combined with a concrete layer, and the wood layer is like you have just half of this layer is carrying, and then in between places you will have extra concrete elements which are in the summertime they can take up a lot of energy, so that the heating of the building is not as fast as without these elements. And then there's
is this a section?
This is a section through the floor, right? And then you will have a concrete floor or a double flooring here for all the flexibility that the building requires. So it's quite, you can see in the picture, it's quite different. For example, this concrete slab here lies when you in the process of the building. This is that's my English. Maybe you can ask me later, then I can try to be a little more precise. Now here you see the final result. Although the development phase is not fully complete, it is becoming apparent that with the exception of the two stairwells, the entire load-bearing structure can be realized with timber or timber concrete composite construction methods. The challenge was to achieve high architectural quality despite the complex requirements. We think this can be achieved if the aesthetics of the architecture reflect the requirements of the low-energy concept. These come through in the design of the facade, which exhibits varying degrees of openness depending on the perspective, as well as in the interior spaces. Here, the timber construction method forms a culturally pioneering function which goes far beyond the construction material itself. The role which concrete played in the 20th century will be assumed by wood in the coming decades. Well, that was it for the moment. I hope that I could give you some interesting insight into our work, and I want you to ask if you come to Zurich accidentally, drop by our office and have a look at our work.